The church was silent, save for the muffled sobs of the small crowd gathered to mourn Stephen, a young man whose life had been cut tragically short. Emma, his mother, stood at the front, her face pale and her hands trembling as she clutched a crumpled tissue. She had always been a strong woman, a single mother who had raised Stephen on her own, but today, her strength seemed to have abandoned her. Her heart was shattered, and the weight of her grief was unbearable. Stephen's coffin lay at the center of the room, its polished wood gleaming under the dim lights. Emma couldn't bring herself to believe that her son was really gone. Just a week ago, he had been full of life, laughing and joking with her over dinner. Now he was lying cold and still in that box, and she would never hear his voice again. As the priest began his final prayer, Emma's eyes drifted to Olivia, Stephen's fiancée, who was sitting in the front row. Olivia was dressed in a sleek black dress, her face hidden behind a veil. She looked every bit the grieving widow, but something about her demeanor made Emma uneasy. Olivia had always been charming and sweet. But lately, Emma had noticed a change in her. There was a coldness in her eyes, a calculating edge that Emma couldn't quite place. The priest finished his prayer, and the mourners began to file out of the church, offering their condolences to Emma as they passed. Olivia lingered behind, her gaze fixed on the coffin. Emma watched her closely, her unease growing. Why wasn't Olivia crying? Why did she seem so detached? As the last of the mourners left, Emma found herself alone in the church with Olivia and the coffin. The silence was deafening. Suddenly, Olivia turned to Emma, her expression unreadable. "Emma," she said softly, "there's something you need to see." Emma frowned. "What are you talking about?" Olivia didn't answer. Instead, she walked over to the coffin and placed her hands on the lid. Before Emma could stop her, Olivia pushed the lid open, revealing Stephen's lifeless body inside. Emma gasped, her heart pounding in her chest. "What are you doing?" she cried, rushing forward to close the coffin, but Olivia stopped her, gripping her arm tightly. "Look closer," Olivia whispered, her voice cold and steady. Emma hesitated, her eyes darting to Stephen's face. He looked peaceful, as if he were merely sleeping. But then she noticed something strange. His chest, it was moving, just slightly, almost imperceptibly, but it was definitely moving. Emma's breath caught in her throat. "No, this can't be." Olivia's lips curled into a faint smile. "He's not dead, Emma. He's alive." Emma's world spun. Her knees buckled, and she gripped the edge of the coffin to steady herself. Her eyes darted between Olivia's calm, almost smug expression and Stephen's chest, which was now rising and falling more noticeably. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. How could this be? The doctors had pronounced him dead. She had seen his body herself, cold and lifeless, just hours ago. What is this?" Emma stammered, her voice trembling. "What have you done?" Olivia's smile widened, but there was no warmth in it. "I saved him," she said simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "He wasn't supposed to die, not yet." Emma's heart pounded in her chest. "What are you talking about? Stephen was in a car accident. He didn't survive. The doctor said—" "The doctors were wrong," Olivia interrupted, her tone sharp. "Or maybe they were paid to be wrong. Either way, Stephen is alive, and he's going to stay that way." Emma's mind reeled. Paid to be wrong. What was Olivia implying? She stared at her son's face, his skin still pale but no longer the ghostly white it had been earlier. His eyelids fluttered slightly and Emma's breath hitched. He was alive. Her son was alive. But why had Olivia kept this a secret? Why had she let everyone believe he was dead? Why had she let Emma suffer through this unbearable grief? "Why didn't you tell me?" Emma demanded, her voice rising. "Why did you let me think he was gone? Why did you let me go through this?" Olivia's expression hardened. "Because it was necessary," she said coldly. "Stephen was in danger. This was the only way to protect him." "Danger? From who?" Emma's voice was frantic now. "What are you talking about?" Olivia hesitated, her eyes darting around the empty church as if she expected someone to be listening. "There are people who want him dead, Emma. Powerful people. They tried to kill him once, and they'll try again if they find out he's still alive. This funeral. It was the only way to throw them off. Emma's head spun. None of this made sense. Stephen was just a regular young man. He didn't have enemies. He didn't have a dangerous life. What was Olivia talking about? Before Emma could ask more questions, a low groan came from the coffin. Stephen's eyes fluttered open and he blinked up at the ceiling, disoriented. Emma's heart leapt and she reached for him, tears streaming down her face. "Stephen!" she cried, clutching his hand. "Oh, my boy! You're alive!" Stephen turned his head slowly, his eyes focusing on her. "Mom?" he croaked, his voice weak. What's going on?" Emma opened her mouth to answer, but Olivia stepped forward, cutting her off. "You're safe now, Stephen," she said, her voice soothing but firm. "But we need to move quickly. We don't have much time." Stephen frowned, his brow furrowing in confusion. "Time for what? What happened? Why am I in a coffin?" Olivia didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled out a small syringe filled with a clear liquid. Before Emma could react, Olivia leaned over the coffin and injected the liquid into Stephen's arm. "What are you doing?" Emma shouted, grabbing Olivia's arm. "What is that?" Olivia shook her off, her expression cold. "It's to keep him calm," she said. "He needs to stay quiet until we can get him out of here." Stephen's eyes fluttered shut again, and his breathing slowed. Emma stared at him in horror, then turned to Olivia, her fear giving way to anger. "You're lying," she said, her voice shaking. "This isn't about protecting him. This is about you. What are you hiding, Olivia? What have you done?" Olivia's eyes narrowed, and for a moment Emma thought she saw a flicker of guilt in them. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by that same cold, calculating expression. "You don't understand, Emma," Olivia said quietly. "You never did, but you will. Soon." Before Emma could respond, Olivia turned and walked toward the back of the church, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Emma watched her go, her mind racing. She didn't know what was happening, but one thing was clear. Olivia was hiding something dangerous, and Emma was going to find out what it was. Emma stood frozen, her gaze shifting between Olivia's retreating figure and Stephen, who lay unconscious in the coffin. Her mind was a whirlwind of confusion, fear, and anger. She couldn't let Olivia leave, not without answers, not without knowing what was really going on. "Olivia, wait!" Emma called out, her voice echoing through the empty church. She hurried after her, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Olivia paused near the exit, her back stiff, but she didn't turn around. "You can't just walk away," Emma said, her voice trembling with emotion. "You owe me an explanation. You owe Stephen an explanation. What is this? What are you hiding?" Olivia finally turned, her face unreadable. For a moment she said nothing, her cold eyes studying Emma as if weighing her options. Then she sighed, a faint, almost mocking smile playing on her lips. "Fine," Olivia said, her tone clipped. "But not here. It's not safe." "Not safe?" Emma repeated, her voice rising. "What do you mean, not safe? You're talking in riddles, Olivia. Tell me the truth." Olivia glanced around the church, her eyes narrowing as if she expected someone to be watching. "Follow me," she said finally, turning and pushing open the heavy wooden doors. "But keep your voice down, and don't ask questions until we're somewhere secure." Emma hesitated, her instincts screaming at her not to trust Olivia. But what choice did she have? Stephen was alive, and Olivia seemed to be the only one who knew why. Swallowing her fear, Emma followed Olivia out of the church and into the dimly lit parking lot. The night air was cool and the streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement. Olivia walked briskly, her heels clicking against the asphalt, and Emma struggled to keep up. They reached a sleek black car parked in the far corner of the lot, and Olivia unlocked it with a click of her key fob. "Get in," Olivia said, opening the driver's side door. Emma hesitated again, her hand gripping the edge of the car door. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere we can talk," Olivia replied, her tone impatient. "Now get in unless you want to risk Stephen's life." The mention of Stephen's name was enough to push Emma into action. She slid into the passenger seat, her heart pounding as Olivia started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot. The car was silent except for the hum of the engine, and Emma stared out the window, her mind racing. They drove for what felt like an eternity, the city lights fading into the distance as they entered a quieter, more secluded area. Finally, Olivia pulled into the driveway of a small, nondescript house and parked the car. "This is it," Olivia said, turning off the engine. "Come on." Emma followed her inside, her unease growing with every step. The house was sparsely furnished with plain white walls and minimal decor. It didn't look like a place Olivia would live in. It felt cold, impersonal, almost like a hideout. Olivia led her into the living room and gestured for her to sit on the couch. Emma obeyed, her eyes darting around the room as Olivia sat across from her, her expression unreadable. "Now," Olivia said, folding her hands in her lap. "You want the truth? Here it is. Stephen wasn't in a car accident. That was a cover story." Emma's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Olivia continued, her voice steady, "that someone tried to kill him, someone powerful, and they almost succeeded." Emma's mind raced. "Who? Who would want to kill Stephen? He's just a regular guy. He doesn't have enemies." Olivia's lips curled into a faint, bitter smile. "You don't know your son as well as you think you do, Emma. Stephen has been involved in something dangerous, something he shouldn't have been a part of." Emma shook her head, refusing to believe it. Number Stephen wouldn't do anything like that. He's a good kid. He's always been a good kid. "People change," Olivia said coldly. "And Stephen, well, let's just say he got in over his head." Emma's hands clenched into fists. "What are you talking about? What did he do?" Olivia hesitated, her eyes narrowing as if she were deciding how much to reveal. Finally, she leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Stephen was involved in a money laundering scheme," she said. "A big one. He thought he was being smart, thought he could make some quick cash and get out before anyone noticed, but he was wrong. The people he was working with, they don't take kindly to betrayal." Emma's stomach churned. Money laundering? Betrayal? This didn't sound like the Stephen she knew. The Stephen she had raised was kind, honest, hard-working. He wouldn't get involved in something like this. He wouldn't. "You're lying," Emma said, her voice shaking. "Stephen wouldn't do that. He wouldn't." Olivia's expression softened, but there was no warmth in her eyes. "I know it's hard to hear, Emma, but it's the truth. And now, because of his mistakes, his life is in danger. That's why I had to fake his death, to protect him." Emma's mind was spinning. She didn't want to believe it, but Olivia's words were too detailed, too specific to be a lie. And yet something still didn't add up. "If that's true," Emma said slowly, "then why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me think he was dead? Why did you let me suffer like that?" Olivia's gaze flickered, and for a moment, Emma thought she saw a flicker of guilt in her eyes. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "I couldn't risk it," Olivia said. "The fewer people who knew, the better. I couldn't trust anyone, not even you." Emma's heart ached at the words. Not even her. Olivia, the woman Stephen had loved, the woman Emma had welcomed into their family, didn't trust her. "So what now?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What happens to Stephen?" Olivia leaned back, her expression hardening. "Now. We wait. Stephen is safe for now, but it's only a matter of time before they find out he's alive. When they do, well, let's just say we need to be ready." Emma's stomach turned. "Who are they, Olivia? Who are these people?" Olivia's lips tightened into a thin line. "You don't want to know, Emma. Trust me." But Emma didn't trust her. Not anymore. And as she sat there staring at the woman who had turned her life upside down, she realized one thing. She was going to find out the truth. No matter what it took. Emma sat in silence, her mind racing as she tried to process everything Olivia had told her. Stephen, her sweet, kind-hearted son, involved in a money laundering scheme. It didn't make sense. None of it did. And yet, Olivia's calm, calculated demeanor made it clear that she wasn't lying, or at least not entirely. "Olivia," Emma said finally, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. If Stephen was involved in something illegal, why didn't he tell me? Why didn't he come to me for help? Olivia sighed, running a hand through her hair. Because he was scared, Emma. Scared of what you'd think. Scared of what you'd do. He didn't want to drag you into this mess. Emma shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. But I'm his mother. I would have done anything to help him. I would have protected him. Maybe, Olivia said, her tone softening slightly. But Stephen didn't see it that way. He thought he could handle it on his own, and by the time he realized he couldn't, it was too late. Emma's hands clenched into fists. And you? Where do you fit into all of this? How did you get involved? Olivia hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. I was part of it too, she admitted quietly. Not the money laundering, but the people behind it. I was supposed to keep an eye on Stephen, make sure he didn't cause any trouble, but I fell in love with him. And when I realized what they were planning to do to him, I couldn't let it happen. Emma's breath caught in her throat. So you're one of them? You're part of this criminal organization? Olivia's eyes flashed with anger. I was, she snapped, but not anymore. I risked everything to save Stephen. Everything. Do you have any idea what they'll do to me if they find out I helped him? Emma stared at her, her mind reeling. Olivia had been working for the people who wanted Stephen dead. She had been part of the very organization that had put her son's life in danger. And yet, she had saved him. Why? Out of love? Or was there something more to it? Olivia, Emma said slowly, her voice trembling. What aren't you telling me? What's really going on here? Olivia's expression hardened and she looked away. You don't need to know everything, Emma. The less you know, the safer you are. No, Emma said firmly, her fear giving way to anger. I'm done with secrets. I'm done with lies. If you want me to trust you, if you want me to help you protect Stephen, then you need to tell me the truth. All of it. Olivia hesitated, her eyes darting around the room as if she were weighing her options. Finally, she let out a long, frustrated sigh and leaned forward, her voice low and urgent. Fine, she said. But you need to understand something, Emma. Once I tell you this, there's no going back. You'll be in danger. Stephen will be in danger. Are you sure you want to know? Emma didn't hesitate. Yes. Olivia nodded, her expression grim. The people Stephen was working for, they're not just criminals. They're powerful, connected. They have ties to politicians, law enforcement, even the military. If they find out Stephen's alive, they'll stop at nothing to silence him, and anyone who gets in their way. Emma's stomach churned. But why? What does Stephen know that's so dangerous? Olivia's lips tightened into a thin line. He knows too much. About their operations, their connections, their plans. He was supposed to be a pawn, but he started asking questions, digging too deep, and when he realized what he'd gotten himself into, he tried to back out. That's when they decided he was a liability. Emma's heart ached at the thought of her son, scared and alone, caught up in something so much bigger than himself. And you? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why did you help him? Olivia's gaze softened, and for the first time Emma thought she saw genuine emotion in her eyes. Because I love him, she said simply, and because I couldn't live with myself if I let them kill him. Emma studied her for a long moment, searching for any sign of deception. But all she saw was a woman who had risked everything for the man she loved. And despite everything, Emma couldn't help but feel a flicker of respect for her. All right, Emma said finally, her voice steady. What do we do now? How do we protect Stephen? Olivia leaned back, her expression hardening once more. First, we need to keep him hidden. The funeral bought us some time, but it won't last forever. Eventually, they'll figure out he's alive. And when they do, they'll come for him. Emma nodded, her mind racing. And then? And then, Olivia said, her voice cold and determined. We fight back. Emma sat in stunned silence, her mind racing as Olivia's words sank in. Fight back? Against a powerful, dangerous organization? It sounded impossible. And yet, what choice did they have? Stephen's life was at stake, and Emma wasn't about to sit back and let anyone hurt her son. "Fight back how?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. "We're just two people. How are we supposed to take on an entire criminal network?" Olivia's eyes gleamed with determination. "We're not just two people," she said. "Stephen has information that could bring them down. If we can get that information to the right people, we might have a chance." Emma frowned. "What kind of information?" "Documents," Olivia replied. "Emails, bank records, names. Everything they've been trying to hide. Stephen was smart. He kept copies of everything, just in case." Emma's heart leapt. "Where are they?" Olivia hesitated, her gaze flickering to the floor. "That's the problem. Stephen hid them somewhere safe, but he didn't tell me where. He didn't trust me completely, not after he found out I was working for them." Emma's stomach twisted. "So we don't even know where to start?" "Not exactly," Olivia said, her voice tight. "But I have an idea. Stephen mentioned a place once, a spot he used to go to when he was a kid, somewhere he felt safe. If I had to guess, that's where he hid the documents." Emma's mind raced. Stephen had always loved the old treehouse in their backyard. He'd spent hours there as a child, reading, drawing, and dreaming. Could he have hidden something there? It seemed too obvious, but then again, Stephen had always been sentimental. "The treehouse," Emma said slowly. "He used to spend all his time there. Do you think—" Olivia's eyes lit up. "It's possible. We need to check." Emma nodded, her heart pounding. "All right, let's go." Olivia shook her head. "Not yet. We need to be careful. If they're watching us, we can't just walk in there. We need a plan." Emma frowned. "What kind of plan?" Olivia leaned forward, her voice low and urgent. "First, we need to make sure no one's following us. We'll take separate cars and meet at your house. Once we're there, we'll search the treehouse quickly and quietly. If we find the documents, we'll take them and leave immediately. No delays." Emma nodded, her mind racing. It sounded risky, but what other choice did they have? "And if we don't find them?" Olivia's expression darkened. "Then we're back to square one, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it." Emma took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. "All right, let's do it." Olivia stood, her movements brisk and efficient. "I'll go first. Wait 10 minutes, then follow me. And Emma, be careful. If anything feels off, don't go home. Call me and we'll figure something else out." Emma nodded, her heart pounding as Olivia turned and walked out the door. She sat there for a moment, her mind racing, before finally standing and heading for the car. The drive home felt like an eternity, every shadow, every passing car making her heart skip a beat. Was someone following her? She couldn't tell. All she could do was keep driving and hope for the best. When she finally pulled into her driveway, Olivia was already there, waiting in the shadows. Emma parked the car and hurried over to her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. "Anything?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Olivia shook her head. "No sign of anyone. Let's move." They crept around the side of the house, staying in the shadows as they made their way to the backyard. The treehouse loomed in the darkness, its wooden frame creaking softly in the wind. Emma's heart ached at the sight of it, memories of Stephen's childhood flooding her mind. She pushed them aside, focusing on the task at hand. Olivia climbed the ladder first, her movements quick and silent. Emma followed, her hands trembling as she gripped the rungs. When they reached the top, Olivia pulled out a small flashlight and began searching the cramped space, her eyes scanning every corner. Emma joined her, her heart pounding as she lifted an old blanket and peered underneath. Nothing. She moved to the corner where Stephen had kept a small box of toys and opened it. Still nothing. "Anything?" Emma whispered, her voice tight with desperation. Olivia shook her head, her expression grim. "Not yet. Keep looking." Emma's hands trembled as she searched, her mind racing. Where could he have hidden them? And then she saw it. A loose floorboard near the back wall. Her heart leapt and she hurried over, prying it up with her fingers. There, tucked inside, was a small, waterproof envelope. "Olivia," Emma whispered, her voice shaking. "I found it." Olivia turned, her eyes widening as she saw the envelope. She hurried over, taking it from Emma's hands and opening it quickly. Inside were several sheets of paper, covered in names, numbers, and dates. "This is it," Olivia said, her voice filled with relief. "This is what we need." Emma's heart soared, but before she could say anything, a noise from outside made them both freeze. Footsteps. Someone was in the backyard. Olivia's eyes widened, and she quickly stuffed the documents back into the envelope. "We need to go, now." Emma nodded, her heart pounding as they climbed down the ladder as quietly as possible. But as they reached the bottom, a voice cut through the darkness. "Going somewhere?" Emma's blood ran cold. She turned slowly, her heart pounding as a figure stepped out of the shadows. It was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, his face hidden in the darkness. But the gun in his hand was all too visible. Olivia stepped in front of Emma, her voice cold and steady. "You're too late. We already have the documents." The man chuckled, a low, menacing sound. "Oh, I'm not here for the documents. I'm here for you." Emma's heart stopped. They were out of time. The man stepped closer, his gun glinting in the faint moonlight. Emma's breath caught in her throat, her mind racing as she tried to think of a way out. Olivia, however, remained eerily calm, her eyes locked on the man as she slowly moved in front of Emma, shielding her. "You don't want to do this," Olivia said, her voice steady but firm. "You're just following orders, but this doesn't have to end badly for you." The man chuckled, a low, menacing sound. "You think you can talk your way out of this? You're in way over your head, sweetheart." Olivia's jaw tightened, but she didn't back down. "Maybe, but if you pull that trigger, you'll have more than just me to deal with. The documents are already out of your reach. Killing us won't change that." Emma's heart pounded as she watched the exchange, her hands trembling at her sides. She didn't know what Olivia was planning, but she trusted her instincts. If Olivia was buying time, Emma needed to be ready to act. The man hesitated, his grip on the gun tightening. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Olivia shot back, her voice sharp. "Do you really think we'd come here without a backup plan? The moment we don't check in, those documents go public, and then your bosses, they'll be the least of your worries?" The man's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Emma thought she saw a flicker of doubt in his expression. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a cold, calculating glare. "Nice try," he said, raising the gun, "but I'm not falling for it." Before Emma could react, Olivia lunged forward, tackling the man to the ground. The gun went off, the sound echoing through the night, but the shot went wide, missing them both. Emma screamed, her instincts kicking in as she scrambled to help. Olivia and the man struggled on the ground, their movements frantic and desperate. Olivia was smaller, but she was quick and determined, her hands clawing at the man's wrist as she tried to wrestle the gun away. Emma grabbed a nearby rock, her hands shaking as she raised it above her head. "Olivia! Move!" Emma shouted. Olivia rolled to the side just as Emma brought the rock down, striking the man's shoulder. He cried out in pain, his grip on the gun loosening. Olivia seized the opportunity, grabbing the gun and pointing it at him. "Don't move," Olivia said, her voice cold and steady. The man froze, his eyes wide with fear as he stared down the barrel of the gun. Emma stood there, her chest heaving, the rock still clutched in her hand. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions, fear, relief, anger, but she forced herself to focus. "What do we do now?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. Olivia didn't take her eyes off the man. "We tie him up and call the police. But not the local cops. We need someone we can trust." Emma nodded, her mind racing. "What about Detective Harris? He's an old friend. He'll know what to do." Olivia hesitated, then nodded. "All right. Call him. But hurry." Emma fumbled for her phone, her hand still shaking as she dialed the number. Detective Harris answered on the second ring, his voice groggy with sleep. "Emma, do you know what time it is?" "Harris, I need your help," Emma said, her voice urgent. "It's Stephen. He's in trouble. We're at my house. Please just come and bring backup." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then Harris's voice was sharp and alert. "I'm on my way. Don't do anything stupid." Emma hung up, her heart still pounding. She turned back to Olivia, who was still holding the gun on the man, her expression unreadable. "He's coming," Emma said. Olivia nodded, her eyes never leaving the man. "Good. Now we just have to wait." The minutes dragged by, each one feeling like an eternity. Emma's mind raced, her thoughts a chaotic jumble of fear and hope. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing. They couldn't let the man go. He was their only link to the people who wanted Stephen dead. Finally, the sound of sirens cut through the night, and Emma's heart leapt with relief. Moments later, Detective Harris and 2 other officers burst into the backyard, their guns drawn. "Emma!" Harris shouted, his eyes wide as he took in the scene. "What the hell is going on?" Emma hurried over to him, her voice trembling as she explained everything. Stephen's involvement in the money laundering scheme, Olivia's role in faking his death, the documents they had found, and the man who had come to kill them. Harris listened in stunned silence, his expression growing darker with every word. When Emma finished, he turned to Olivia, his eyes narrowing. "Is this true?" he asked. Olivia nodded, her expression grim. "Every word." Harris sighed, running a hand through his hair. "This is a mess. A damn mess. But if what you're saying is true, we need to act fast. Those documents, where are they?" Olivia handed him the envelope, her hand steady despite the chaos around them. Harris opened it, his eyes scanning the contents quickly. His expression darkened, and he looked up at Emma and Olivia, his voice low and urgent. "This is big. Bigger than I thought. We need to get you both somewhere safe. And Stephen, where is he?" Olivia hesitated, then nodded toward the house. "Inside. He's still unconscious." Harris turned to one of the officers. "Get an ambulance here now." The officer nodded, hurrying off to make the call. Harris turned back to Emma and Olivia, his expression serious. "You 2 need to come with me. We'll get you to a safe house, and then we'll figure out what to do next. But one thing's for sure, this isn't over." Emma nodded, her heart pounding as she followed Harris to the car. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing. They had taken the first step in fighting back, and she wasn't going to stop until Stephen was safe. The safe house was a small, nondescript apartment on the outskirts of the city. It was furnished with the bare essentials, a couch, a table, a few chairs, and the windows were covered with heavy curtains. Emma sat on the couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap as Detective Harris paced the room, his expression grim. Stephen was in the bedroom, still unconscious but stable. The paramedics had checked him over and assured Emma that he would wake up soon, but that did little to ease her anxiety. Olivia sat across from her, her face pale and drawn, her eyes fixed on the floor. Harris stopped pacing and turned to face them, his arms crossed over his chest. "All right," he said, his voice low and serious. "Let's go over this one more time. Stephen was involved in a money laundering scheme. Olivia, you were working for the people behind it, but you helped fake Stephen's death to protect him. And now, those people are after all of you. Is that correct?" Olivia nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes." Harris sighed, running a hand through his hair. "This is a mess. A damn mess. But if these documents are as incriminating as you say, we might have a chance to bring these people down. But it's not going to be easy. They're powerful, and they're not going to go down without a fight." Emma's heart sank. What do we do? Harris hesitated, his eyes darting between Emma and Olivia. "First, we need to keep you safe, all of you. That means staying here, out of sight, until we can figure out our next move. Second, we need to get those documents to the right people, someone who can't be bought or intimidated. And third—" He paused, his expression darkening. "We need to find out who's behind this, who's pulling the strings." Olivia looked up, her eyes filled with fear. "You don't understand. These people, they're not just criminals, they're connected. Politicians, law enforcement, even the military. If you go after them, you're putting a target on your back." Harris's jaw tightened. "I've been a cop for over 20 years. I've dealt with my share of bad guys, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that no one is untouchable, not if you have the right evidence." Emma's heart swelled with gratitude. "Thank you, Harris, for everything." Harris nodded, his expression softening. "Your family, Emma. I'm not going to let anything happen to you or Stephen, but you need to trust me, all of you." Olivia hesitated, then nodded. "All right. What do you need us to do?" Harris pulled out a notebook and pen, his tone businesslike. First, I need you to tell me everything you know, names, dates, locations, anything that could help us build a case. Second, we need to get Stephen to a secure location as soon as he's stable. And third, he paused, his eyes locking on Olivia's. You need to be ready to testify. If this goes to trial, you're our best shot at taking these people down. Olivia's face paled, but she nodded. I'll do whatever it takes. Emma reached over and squeezed Olivia's hand, her heart aching for the woman who had risked everything to save her son. We're in this together, she said softly. No matter what. Olivia gave her a faint smile, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Emma. Harris cleared his throat, drawing their attention back to him. All right, let's get to work. The next few days were a blur of activity. Harris worked tirelessly, coordinating with a small, trusted team of officers to investigate the documents and track down the people behind the scheme. Emma and Olivia provided as much information as they could, their memories piecing together the fragments of Stephen's involvement and Olivia's role in the organization. Stephen woke up on the second day, disoriented and confused. Emma was by his side in an instant, her heart swelling with relief as she hugged him tightly. It took some time to explain everything that had happened, but when Stephen finally understood, his face filled with guilt and regret. I'm so sorry, Mom, he said, his voice trembling. I never meant to drag you into this. I thought I could handle it on my own. Emma shook her head, her eyes filled with tears. You don't have to handle anything on your own, Stephen. That's what family is for. We're going to get through this. Together. Stephen nodded, his eyes filled with determination. All right. What do we do now? Emma smiled, squeezing his hand. We fight back. Weeks turned into months, and slowly but surely the pieces began to fall into place. The documents Stephen had hidden proved to be the key to unraveling the entire operation. Names were named, arrests were made, and the powerful network that had seemed untouchable began to crumble. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, threats, and moments of doubt. But through it all, Emma, Stephen, and Olivia stood together, their bond stronger than ever. And when the final arrest was made and the last piece of evidence submitted, they knew they had won. The trial was long and grueling, but Olivia's testimony was the final nail in the coffin. The people behind the scheme were sentenced to life in prison, their empire destroyed. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Emma, Stephen, and Olivia could breathe easy. As they stood outside the courthouse, the sun shining down on them, Emma turned to Stephen and Olivia, her heart filled with love and gratitude. We did it, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. We made it. Stephen smiled, his eyes filled with relief. Yeah, we did. Olivia nodded, her expression soft. Thanks to you, Emma. You never gave up on us. Emma shook her head, her eyes filled with tears. I couldn't. You're my family, and family sticks together. As they walked away from the courthouse, their heads held high, Emma knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, because they were stronger than anyone had ever given them credit for. And they had proven that even in the darkest of times, love and determination could conquer all.
Subscribe and press the bell icon so that you never miss the amazing video.